Now to our NBC News investigation. Federal health officials say up to 1 million people may have been exposed to toxic water at North Carolina's Camp Lejeune over decades. Under a law passed last year, more than 90,000 have filed claims. But as Cynthia McFadden reports, for the youngest victims, justice has been hard to find.
It's known as Baby Heaven, across the street from North Carolina's massive marine base, Camp Lejeune. Records indicate hundreds of babies are buried here, many in unmarked graves, and an untold number of them with one thing in common.
Oh, baby girl.
The daughter of Jerry Kozabarich was one of them, buried here 54 years ago.
We think of you every day, and I wish you were here. I love you, sweetie.
In 1969, she was a young bride, 8 months pregnant, with a husband about to deploy to Vietnam.
The doctor said your baby is dead, and it's not my fault.
Looking back now, she says there were warning signs. The first came at a reception for officers' wives.
I saw a woman who was even more pregnant than I was. And I said, "When are you due?" And she looked at me, she said, "My baby's dead." And she turned her back. It turned out all the wives in the squadron, they all had either birth defects or they lost their babies.
What was going on? The federal government now acknowledges that between 1953 and 1987, some of the water wells at Camp Lejeune were contaminated with known carcinogens detected at toxic levels, up to 280 times the safe level for humans.
The barracks water was brown, and it had an awful odor.
In 1980, after 3 miscarriages, Crystal Dickens lost another baby at 6 months pregnant. Were the doctors at the time on the base, were they understanding and compassionate?
No, they were not. Your baby's dead. We're going to take it.
Crystal.
Yes, they don't care.
She now has renal failure, one of the 15 serious conditions the U.S. government recognizes as linked to the contaminants. The CDC now says babies exposed in the womb are up to 4 times more likely to develop serious birth defects, which can lead to death.
When we poison the water, we poison ourselves.
Environmental activist Erin Brockovich told us that as women came forward telling of multiple miscarriages and babies who died in the womb, a pattern began to emerge.
Those voices weren't being heard.
So NBC News interviewed 24 women who lived at Camp Lejeune and brought some of them together. Most now sick themselves. Each of them lost babies.
Why you keep lying? Why you keep stalling?
Documents show that officials at Camp Lejeune were warned about the toxic water at least 4 years before doing anything about it, including at the base hospital, where all the women were treated and the highest levels of contamination were found. Last year, Congress passed the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, which allows those exposed to file for damages. For years, even after the wells were shut, the possible health effects were hidden or minimized, including in this pamphlet produced by the Marines 3 decades after the initial discovery, which sparked a congressional inquiry. Was there a continuing cover-up? General Gray Payne, then at the Pentagon, was called to testify.
I don't think we were factually wrong in the brochure.
He says he no longer stands by its contents.
In the booklet it says, each and every well that was affected was immediately shut down. That's page 3. But we know that wasn't true.
That's correct.
But General, with true respect, this book shines it all up pretty to try to make what went wrong look better than it was.
I think that it understated, in many cases, the situation. I did not know that was not the case in 2010. And I can tell you that the Commandant did not know, because we had been briefed over and over that those were the facts, or we never would have published that. Absolutely.
What you're saying really is even worse. They were lying to the general at the Pentagon about what the facts on the ground were? That's pretty damning.
It is.
Brockovich argues the lack of transparency by the Marine Corps is sadly common.
Every single time. For 30 years I've seen this over and over again. It's the secret. It's the cover-up. It's the lie that becomes the silent killer.
The Navy says they remain committed to addressing all claims. Cynthia McFadden, NBC News, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.